Well, Jake, we know as President Biden is flying back to the East Coast tonight after testing positive for COVID, as you said, and cutting his trip to Las Vegas short, we know that he is facing potentially a new moment in his campaign. He's been hearing for the last several days from Democratic lawmakers, officials, and others about their concerns about his path forward here. And talking to a senior Democratic advisor tonight who is telling me this, he said he believes the president is being, quote, more receptive to these calls of concern. He goes on to say this: the private conversations with the Hill are continuing, this advisor tells me. He's being receptive, not as defiant as he is publicly. Goes on to talking about Vice President Kamala Harris, who initially he wondered how she may fare in a campaign should it come to that. I'm told now he's asking questions, saying, do you think Kamala can win? Again, this advisor offers caution, saying this: it is still unclear where he's going to land, but he seems to be listening. So, Jake, what we do know, this is a new moment for President Biden. Tomorrow marks 3 weeks since the debate in Atlanta, as you well know. He's heard so much concern from across the Democratic Party. Time is running short. The Democratic National Committee was thinking about starting their nomination process next week. That is now on hold. That will not begin until August 1st. So there is a bit of time for the president to make his decision. But hanging over all of this is the same thing as it's been for the last 3 weeks. If not him, who? But tonight, as the president flies back to the East Coast from Las Vegas, it is certainly a new moment for him and his potential candidacy, Jake.
All right, Jeff Zeleny, thanks so much. And I'm here ringside with Dana Bash and Chris Wallace. It's something that was just in Peter Navarro's speech. Peter Navarro, who just did some prison time for contempt of Congress violation and was a top advisor to Donald Trump. He made this argument, and I've heard it a few times, and it's certainly not in keeping with the let's bring the temperature down idea that we've been hearing. And that is this idea that they keep coming for Donald Trump and tying the they, whether it's impeachment or prosecutions of Trump, tying that they to the shooting on Saturday. And again, we still do not know the motives for the shooter, for his twisted and sick act. But the idea that somehow the House committee looking into January 6th or these prosecutions or whatever are in any way appropriately grouped with an assassination attempt is very dangerous language.
It's very dangerous language, but also as we talk about that, and obviously we are at the Republican convention, if I may, I just want to take a moment to digest what Jeff just reported about President Biden, because this is a shift. This is different. He is being told that the president is receptive. So different from what you have been hearing, from what I have been hearing, from what you have been hearing, which is he's dug in. He doesn't want to listen. Our reporting about the fact that he's been having very combative conversations with House Democrats who are desperate for him to listen to their concerns and their fear that it's not just him who could lose, but the House and the Senate as well. And this seems to be a potential, again, he was very cautious, but a potential turning point, that there is even a remote possibility that the door is opened this much is something we have not heard up until right now.
But look at the situation. His political support is falling away. There's a report from ABC News that Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, came in sometime in the last couple of days and said it would be better if you dropped out. We're told that the financial support is dropping away, that big donors across the country have basically said we're not putting any more money into the Biden campaign with the situation that it is. And then on top of everything else, with all the concerns about his mental acuity, to now have COVID. And I must say, it was, the metaphor wrote itself, the caption wrote itself, as you saw him like a very old, weak man struggling to get up the stairs to Air Force One. If he isn't rethinking it, you'd have to say he's out of touch with reality. Not saying he's going to drop out. We don't know that. But there's an awful lot that is piling up, one, blow after another. that you would think have him and his inner circle rethinking the viability of this campaign.
Yeah. And the governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, is speaking right now. Let me throw it back to Anderson. Anderson?
Jake, thanks very much. Here with the team. David Axelrod, this report, Jeff Zeleny reporting. Do you believe that this is some sort of a shift? This idea that the president has been asking, do you think Kamala Harris could win?
I think that is a question that he has asked, but at this point, it's a question really about him and whether he has any chance in this race. And something has happened, Anderson, in the last several weeks between the debate, the events of Saturday and the assassination attempt, and the way former President Trump reacted to it with the iconic photo. It's crystallized something that has sent the numbers spiraling to the degree they can in a very polarized country. So, look, there are three things that you look at. One is polling, and the polling is getting worse. The battleground, which is getting larger. There were 6 or perhaps 7 battleground states to start. Now you have 11 or 12. And then money. Do you have the resources to compete? And that money has dried up. And now donors are not talking about how do we shore up the president. They're talking about how do we shore up the House? How do we shore up the Senate? And that's where they're shifting their resources. This is inexorable. And I don't say this with any pleasure at all because I worked with Joe Biden. He served this country well for most of his life. And this is not the coda that he wants on his career. And I think that's what people are telling him, that he can help improve the chances of winning a race that he says is existential, but the way he has to do it is to exit. And there will be a discussion about whether it's the vice president or not. She certainly is the likely candidate, maybe not the certain candidate, but what is certain is he is not in a position to win this race any longer.
He has not helped himself at all with these interviews that he's done recently. That's one thing that I'm getting the sense of from talking to people. His comments have reinforced the idea that he is not connected to what's happening in the battlegrounds, not just at the presidential level, but as Axelrod was talking about, further down ballot. The people that I'm hearing from still believe that the Democrats could go into August with an undecided convention. I don't want to use the word contested, but the question is, will they go in with a clear nominee? Many people that I am speaking with believe at this moment that they likely will not.
John King, what are you hearing?
To David's point, the White House, the president in his interviews, and the top Biden aides in their conversations back to the Democrats who say, please convince him to get out of the race, has been stopped. The president's not going to do that. They were hoping that would stop it. If the president's public comments, it has not stopped it. Some of the same senior Democrats are calling back again and again and again. To David's point, the data is getting progressively worse, and it's all being sent to the White House. We have zero indication the president is ready to say, okay, let's talk about this. But people who are in touch with his inner circle say the conversations with them in the last 24 hours or so are a little bit different. That they're not as defiant. They're not getting told shut up. They're not getting told go away. They're not getting told you're the problem by asking us to do this. Now, does that mean the president's getting the message? We don't know that. We do know, it's sad the President of the United States has COVID, but we now know he's off the road. He's going to be back in Delaware. His wife is going there as well. So if there are going to be these conversations and people are going to try to break through with him in the place he's most comfortable, home in Delaware would be the place to do it.
There is something going on, too, Anderson, with Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, who is someone who has had a long relationship with Joe Biden. What Adam Schiff did this morning, where he came out and made this call, is being widely interpreted by everyone.
Said that the president should.
Adam Schiff said that the president should step aside, and that's being widely interpreted as a signal for where Nancy Pelosi is in this. And she is someone who has credibility with him that perhaps others don't. She is the same age as he is. He respects her. Her political instincts are second to none. She is widely respected there. And that call that President Biden did with House Democrats, in the conversations that I'm having, it's being viewed as something of a turning point, particularly the back and forth that the president had with Congressman Jason Crow, who has been very outspoken on January 6th, is a very well-respected.
This was a call shortly before the assassination attempt, correct?
I believe that was
about an hour.
Yes, it was right before. But it got contentious And Crow is not known as someone who would take that kind of a position. He's very well respected in the House. And for the president to kind of have that demeanor, I think sent a real message to House Democrats.
In all these conversations, to Casey's point, Adam Schiff is significant, senior Democrat in California, probably the next senator from California, so close to Pelosi, wouldn't do it without checking with her. What people are saying is they're just hoping the White House gets the message. If not, everyone's talking about next week. There'll be polling a few days after this convention. Everyone expects it'll be even worse for the president. Plus, there's the private internal polling. Everyone says, we hope the president makes his decision, otherwise look for early next week to be a tipping point.
Yeah.
Look, there are a lot of people who want Biden to stay in. I want to just keep pointing out there's still grassroots love for Joe Biden. Everybody doesn't agree. But today is a terrible day. If you pull back and look at this thing, strength versus weakness, a bullet couldn't stop Trump. A virus just stopped Biden. You've got the nominees of this party getting their butts kissed. Biden's getting his butt kicked by his own party. The Democrats are coming apart. The Republicans are coming together. That's what's happening. And at some point, this party has to look at the reality of that. And
let me just say on Pelosi, Nancy Pelosi, first and foremost, no one understands or feels more strongly about the threat that Trumpism represents than Nancy Pelosi. She faced it down as Speaker. And Nancy Pelosi is someone who first and foremost says, how do we win?
How do we win?
How are we going to win?
I'll tell you
and
right
so
now.
I think that's the message that she is driving her, and I'm sure it's the message that she brought to the president.
Anderson, I would just say, last night I saw John at the wall. The number was 330 for Trump. If that number is 330, every one of those potential U.S. senators, the Electoral College, every one of those potential U.S. senators you saw come up there last night will be U.S. senators. And so I think that is what the reality is sinking in, that pathway, that polling that came out that showed those states getting bigger and bigger, and their chances of holding the House and holding the Senate are just slipping away rapidly. And it's like falling down a slippery slope. If you can't get a foothold quickly, you're off the cliff.
Yeah, it's Joe Biden's had the worst 3 weeks in presidential campaign history from the debate to today, and Donald Trump's probably had the best 3 weeks. These two things coinciding are freaking out.
By the way, it's insane that the best 3 weeks includes an attempted assassination.
I mean, the way this has all come down against Joe Biden. I mean, once again today, we're going on the air tonight saying we're praying for Joe Biden. I mean, the best thing you can say about him right now, he's having good days and bad days, and there's more bad days than good days.
Can I make one point?
We got to go.
I think we ought to recognize that Donald Trump is unbeatable in this room. He is a colossus astride this arena. Outside in the real world, he's still underwater in his polling. He's not a popular figure. And if there is a change of candidates, this race changes. There's a reason the Trump people haven't run any debate ads against him. Tony Fabrizio, his pollster, was at an event I moderated today, and he acknowledged, we're not trying to push Biden out of this race. And there's a reason for that. If the race changes...
Do you think Harris changes the race?
I do. I do, but you may not.
People think
We'll
Harris
test the
changes
proposition,
the race.
Scott. But I think people are looking for a change at the top of this ticket, and I think she would represent it.
The conversation, to David's point, among Democrats, whether it's Harris or someone else, is definitely lose with Biden or take a chance.
Yeah, but John,
They
the
wanna
four
take the
people you
chance.
showed on that poll yesterday, right? Kamala Harris was not in any of those. Well, she wasn't in those four. It was Mark Kelly, Josh Shapiro, Wes Moore.
But she is still.
It wasn't Kamala.
The view of it is still that she is still best positioned from a campaign finance position, from a Democratic coalition position. Look, it is a real thing what will happen in the Democratic Party if it is not given serious consideration that the first black female vice president is the presumptive nominee if Biden steps aside. That is a real thing. But also,
They can't do it.
Kamala Harris is also the strongest person who is already established on the best issue for Democrats in this cycle, which is the issue of reproductive rights.
For more on this entire race, I want to bring in 2020 Democratic presidential candidate Andrew Yang. Andrew, so good to see you. I was just talking to Ben about this. I mean, you got Jeffrey Katzenberg, who's now warning President Biden about donor money drying up, and at the same time, the campaign daring donors not to support the president. I mean, this is a tale of two campaigns in some ways, right?
Laura, I met with a mega donor yesterday, and this isn't just the president. He told Senate candidates in swing states, I will not donate to you until Joe Biden passes the torch. And I'm sure he's getting that feedback from others in the party, where if you're a swing senator, imagine having that phone call being told you will not get a dime for your campaign unless you get Joe Biden out.
I mean, that's a tremendous amount of pressure, and I do wonder if that pressure exerted on that particular senator or member of Congress could actually influence a decision by the president. What would that take to connect those dots?
We're starting to see it, Laura, where Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Hakeem Jeffries are taking the concerns from their members to the president. The donor community has been closing ranks and sending the same message. I think that Joe Biden is going to do the right thing and step aside, because right now this is untenable. You can't run a campaign without money. You can't have a nominee that most of the party wants to step aside.
Well, here's the concern. There were millions of people who wanted him to be the person who is the nominee. And I do wonder, what do you think the voters will think if it's the donor class as opposed to voters who are determining whether he should stay in the race? That could actually backfire on Democrats who are talking about democratic principles, could it not?
Voters are saying the exact same thing. I think 72% of Democrats want Joe to step aside. And one of the things we have to keep in mind is that there's going to be a ton of enthusiasm for the new nominee, because those voters do not want Donald Trump in the Oval Office next January. You're going to see, in my opinion, 8 or 9 figures of resources, not just from big donors, but from grassroots $20 donors, as soon as you have a new nominee to take on the Donald Trump J.D. Vance ticket.
You know, on the Republican side, you're talking about that ticket. I mean, there are a number of CEOs reportedly feeling scared stiff and spooked about Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance. I mean, he's worked with Dems like Senator Elizabeth Warren to crack down on big banks. He's praised the FTC chair. And back in 2021, Andrew, he made it pretty clear that he is fine with raising taxes on big corporations. Are these some legitimate fears from these particular donors on the other side?
No, I think J.D. Vance has presented himself as a bit of an isolationist. So I know there are folks that are concerned about America pulling back from various commitments internationally. I do think that there is an appetite for some of the policies you just described. And one of the problems for the Democratic Party is that they have felt like they haven't been championing the working class population as much as you might hope. And so I think there's an opportunity for Republicans to take that case and get some voters from Ohio. Well, Ohio is not really a swing state, but Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, where this election is going to be decided.
I mean, it was once a state that was a swing state. I know it has changed in the recent decade or so. But, you know, although Vance, he has claimed to be pro-worker. I mean, last year he earned, I think, a 0% score from the AFL-CIO when it came to backing working people. That's pretty significant. So how does the Biden campaign use this data to their advantage? Is it a missed opportunity by not talking about it?
Well, J.D. Vance has any number of positions that Democrats will, I'm sure, be advertising heavily. And he's something of a far-right populist. He has a set of ideas that I think some Americans are going to feel uncomfortable with. It was a confident pick by Donald Trump, in my opinion, in the sense that if you're going to win, then you get someone in like J.D. Vance, who's going to be the heir apparent. He's 39 years old. He's friends with Donald Trump Jr. I thought that he might choose Doug Burgum, Glenn Youngkin, even a Nikki Haley or Marco Rubio to try and broaden the base. I don't think that's J.D. Vance's utility. I think the Trump camp thinks they're going to win, and they think they're going to win in large part because their opponent is an 81-year-old incumbent with a 38% approval rating. And that's what I think should change, hopefully, in the next 48 hours.
What do you think is happening in the next 48 hours?
I think that Joe Biden is going to be home in Delaware, and people are coming to him, and he's going to realize that the best thing he can do for the country, his legacy, the party, people that do not want to see Trump have control of the House, the Senate, the White House, and essentially the Supreme Court. So I think that we're going to have a lot of pressure come to bear on the president upcoming. I happen to know of another Democratic member of Congress who has not gone public yet, who will do so shortly. But that to me is the highest leverage thing that can change in this race. I'm certainly someone who wishes that Joe Biden will pass the torch, and I think that he's going to see it the same way if enough people come to him.
Andrew,
the best thing
who do you think he should pass this torch?
Oh, this is the greatest opportunity that they have, Laura. Or imagine a mini primary where the top 6 contenders show up for a debate or a forum. That would be must-see TV. Maybe it'll be on CNN, but the ratings will be sky high because everyone will want to tune in to see who's going to be taking on the Trump Vance ticket. And the Democratic Party actually has many up-and-coming governors and other officials. A poll just came out that showed that there are 4 governors that are outperforming Joe Biden by 5 points in the swing states that are going to decide this race. So you get some of those figures up on stage, and then there'd be tons of excitement among everyday Americans that at least one of the parties has managed to move on from its octogenarian or near octogenarian.
I wonder from voters whether you are overestimating or underestimating the role of a contested primary this close to an election. We'll have to wait and see what they say. I do wonder what you make of Elon Musk's commitment to Donald Trump and the Trump Vance ticket.
I think a lot of folks in Silicon Valley think Trump is going to win. They want to be on the winning team. They think that their business interests will benefit. And they're making a decision to back Trump. Now, I'm someone who does not think that Trump should be back in the Oval Office, and so it's disappointing. But I know some people in those circles, and many of them feel like they're joining the winning team, particularly in the wake of the debate. I mean, if you think about it, some of these commitments have been made in the last 2 weeks.
Andrew Yang, we'll see what transpires. You're saying 48 hours, but Biden is saying he's going nowhere. We'll have to wait and see. Thanks for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Laura. Great being here.
We are learning tonight some disturbing new details about the gunman who tried to assassinate Donald Trump, including the pictures of politicians that investigators discovered on his phone.